I'm in a unique situation and want to know if anyone else has experienced something similar. I'm not the wounded person here. My husband, kids, and parents bear the burden of my past mistakes, for which I am genuinely sorry. Let me be straightforward. About 19 months ago, I was caught having an affair with a married neighbor and father of 3. I'm a 32-year-old woman, my husband is 39, and the neighbor, whom I'll call Steve for confidentiality, was 27 at the time. I made a terrible mistake having the affair with Steve, which began a little over 2 years ago. While the affair lasted nearly 5 months before being exposed, I was physically with Steve only 4 times in total. I know it's hard to believe, but I swear it's true. Well, let me tell you something. I don't believe it. To address questions about my marriage that I'm sure everyone reading this has, were we having issues? Did I not love my husband? Was I unhappy? The answer is a definite no to all those questions. I was completely content and fulfilled in my marriage, and I love my husband and our 2 boys, ages 9 and 11, more than anything in the world. Jim satisfied me emotionally, mentally, and physically. He was everything I ever dreamed of and more. My attraction to Steve was misplaced and stemmed from a deep place that took me back to my first romantic encounter at 18. It was a wild attraction, just like my first time. It was like a wild animal instinct inside me that drove me to this. In high school, I dated 4 boys, but nothing serious beyond a quick kiss at the end of the night. In fact, I considered all those guys as friends since we all grew up together. One day, I was invited to a barbecue at a friend's parents' place where I met Charles. Charles was my friend's cousin, and from the first time I saw him, I was captivated. I was taken at the time. He was 20, and I was 18. From the moment we met, we couldn't keep our eyes off each other. I don't know what it was, but there was something between us that drew me to him, like a magnet to steel or a magnet to metal, she says. We started talking at the barbecue, and he had to leave for work, so we exchanged numbers the next day. On Sunday, we met for ice cream in the evening and took a walk. We talked for hours, totally engrossed with each other, and just spontaneously started kissing. He invited me back to his apartment, and there I had my first experience. Something about Charles excited me and made me want to give him every part of me. To this day, I can't describe it. It was subconscious. I couldn't resist. Beyond the physical relationship, we had nothing in common. In fact, we were incompatible. I ended things with Charles 11 months later, after the passion wore off. A year later, I met my now husband, Jim. He checked all my boxes, and I knew he was the one. We got married a year later, and our marriage had been 13 years of joy until I ruined it. We were blessed with 2 wonderful boys who are the spitting image of their dad and share his awesome personality. I'm sharing these details to explain why I started a relationship with Steve. Steve and his wife, Marcia, moved into our neighborhood, and they were the youngest couple. My husband and I are the second youngest, with the others mostly in their 60s. Everyone warmly welcomed Steve and Marcia. They were invited to a neighborhood picnic where Steve and I first noticed each other, similar to when I first met Charles at a family barbecue a long time ago. The next time I saw Steve was at the car dealership where he worked in finance. We were looking for a new SUV, and when my husband found out Steve worked there, they started talking. We went the next week to check out cars. Steve made sure we got a good deal, and he arranged great financing. Throughout the closing process, Steve and I exchanged glances, but my husband didn't notice. A few days later, I had to bring the vehicle back for mud flaps, and that's when Steve and I had our first inappropriate meeting. He greeted me in the lounge, and then in his office, he mentioned additional financing details. We chatted, and he confessed he wanted to talk to me alone about his feelings. I admitted I felt something too, but it was wrong. He knew it was wrong but didn't care. He wanted me. Fast forward to the next morning, when we had our first closeness encounter at his house after our kids went to school and our spouses left for work. By the way, my husband has a good job, and Marcia is a licensed practical nurse. Steve and I only had physical relations 4 times in the entire 5-month period. There was no love connection, as I loved Jim, and Steve loved Marcia. What we had was just physical, and to be honest, it wasn't as good as what I had with my husband. Not even close, but it was forbidden, and therefore thrilling and dangerous. Looking back now, being a stay-at-home mom for 11 years made me desperate for attention from this attractive younger man. I thought I could have this secret adventure, and still maintain a loving marriage with my husband. That idea came crashing down one Thursday morning, 19 months ago, when Steve and I were caught in bed at his house by Marcia's mother. She walked in on us, fully engaged, and started screaming obscenities. She slapped and scratched Steve, leaving a large gash with her nails. She also hit me square on the jaw and pulled out 2 handfuls of my hair before I could gather my clothes and leave the house. When I got home, I was completely shocked by what had just happened, and the reality of my actions sank in. I realized my perfect marriage to Jim was forever changed and could end because of this. I sat silently for a couple of hours, just staring at the walls, wondering how to tell my husband. Eventually, I decided to call him and left an urgent message, stating that I had something very important to discuss. He didn't respond, so I texted him, but still got no reply. A few minutes later, Marcia and her mother showed up on our front porch, knocking on the door in the bay window, screaming for me to answer. Terrified and thoroughly embarrassed, I didn't respond. Luckily, my boys were at school when this happened. After they left, I laid down on the couch, crying. I briefly fell asleep, but woke up to the sound of a car door in the driveway. I looked out and saw my husband. I rushed to freshen up before going back into the living room to greet him when he opened the door. However, he didn't enter. Instead, I saw through the window that he was walking down the street toward Steve and Marcia's house. I watched as he spent nearly 3 hours there before coming home. I went to hug him, but he kept me away. I started apologizing, but he said my apology wasn't accepted, and he wanted me to leave. I fell to the floor, crying and begging, telling him I didn't want to go, but he insisted. He then called my mother, explained what I'd done, and asked her to come over and pick me up. Mom came over, apologized to Steve, convinced me to go back to her house for the night, and helped me pack some clothes. I left, crying, asking Jim what he would tell the kids. He said he would take care of it. I left, broken-hearted and ashamed. That night, I called Jim, and to my surprise, he answered. He just said hello and went silent. I identified myself, apologized, and promised never to do something like this again. I expressed my commitment to spend the rest of my life making it up to him. Jim remained silent, asking if I had anything more to say. I said no, and asked him about his feelings. He told me he knew what he was feeling, and I started crying. He then said he wanted me to stay at my parents' house for a couple of weeks before coming home. I reluctantly agreed, but asked when I would get to see him and the boys again. He said he didn't want to see me now, but agreed to a brief call every evening at 9 o'clock. The first call ended with me saying, "I love you," and Jim saying nothing, just hanging up. The next night's call went the same way, with me apologizing and Jim staying silent until I stopped talking. He then dropped a bomb, saying he wanted a divorce. Hearing this, I broke down and begged him for another chance. He refused, acknowledging he'd lose half his hard-earned assets. Then, he unexpectedly said he'd give me everything he owns if I just disappeared and left him and the boys alone. I broke down again, insisting he didn't mean that, but he affirmed that he did. We ended the call, and I cried all night. I then started thinking of how I could make him stay, and came up with a plan to offer him a post-nuptial agreement so favorable he couldn't refuse it. All I wanted was a second chance to prove my love, regardless of the cost. The following week, while Jim met with his divorce attorney, I consulted my own lawyer, not to prepare for divorce, but to create a post-nuptial agreement to present to Jim before receiving the divorce papers. I visited 4 different attorneys before finding one who specialized in post-nuptial agreements and was willing to create such a lopsided agreement. Lopsided in that my husband would receive nearly all the benefit in exchange for remaining married to me for a period, giving me a second chance at love. Unfortunately, Jim's lawyer completed the divorce papers in just 11 days, and I was served at my parents' house 2 days later. I had Jim served with the proposed post-nuptial agreement. We talked that night. After he read the proposal, he was a bit surprised at what I had offered, and for the first time, I could sense the caring person I once knew coming through, not the angry man who had been so robotic and cold for the past 2 weeks. The agreement is a complete win for Jim and an opportunity for me to prove I'm worth keeping. I won't go into specific details about the postnuptial, but I can confirm that it allows Jim to keep nearly all our marital assets if we stay married and live together for at least 30 months. Also, if I'm unfaithful again and we divorce, I lose all claims on our marital assets, get nothing, and forgo any alimony and child support payments. The agreement also requires me to get a full-time job within the next 6 months and contribute to our household expenses. Finally, my husband can see other women if he chooses throughout the remainder of our marriage. I know Jim would never be unfaithful. It's not in him. But I want him to know I love him enough to give him this option. To my surprise and delight, Jim accepted the offer with one additional stipulation. The clause Jim wanted added stated there is no requirement for us to sleep together or have any type of cohabitation coitus during the remainder of our marriage. I was saddened and hesitant to agree to this, but I finally did, feeling that with time I could win back his respect, trust, and passionate love. Things have not gone as I thought, and that's why I'm here. We are now 17 and a half months into our second marriage, as I call it, and our relationship is one of being housemates, raising our boys. Don't get me wrong, I thank God every day for the second chance I've been given, but what we have wouldn't qualify as a marriage. It's more like we are two divorced people, cohabitating. Since my affair, Jim has shown absolutely no affection towards me whatsoever. I mean nothing, not even a kiss or a hug. He won't even let me near him to express any type of affection, although I do get in for a hug and a kiss occasionally before he can block me. But I can tell he doesn't like it, so I don't do it very often. Even so, he requires me to submit monthly to at-home STD testing. Also, since the affair, Jim will not go out in public with me, even to family events. When our boys have games, we alternate who takes them. When it's my turn, Jim shows up at the games but doesn't sit with me. Instead, he normally stands on the sidelines with other fathers and acts like I'm not there. The only time we go out together is when we go out of town or on vacations, which we do often. When we travel, he orders adjoining rooms with 2 queen beds each. The boys stay in one room, and we stay in the other in separate beds. I look forward to every trip, as these are the times we are closest and where I've almost been able to break through to him. I told Jim about this and suggested we move from our neighborhood to start fresh. However, Jim said he'd only move if he gets a job promotion requiring relocation. Otherwise, he plans to stay until our boys finish high school. The boys also don't want to move because all their friends live nearby, as do Jim's friends. Since the affair, I lost all my friendships in the neighborhood. Steve and Marcia divorced 8 months after D-Day, but Marcia and her kids still live down the street. The neighborhood women I was once close to cut me off, blaming me for breaking up the family. Now, my home feels like a prison, and I rarely go outside, staying inside or in my backyard tending to my gardens. My boys are often out with their friends in the neighborhood, including Marcia and Steve's kids, but thankfully, their world hasn't changed much. Jim follows a similar routine, hanging out with neighborhood men, smoking cigars, and sipping bourbon at night, either at our house or theirs. After work, the guys enjoy relaxing together. Jim goes to work, hits the gym, and then comes home, usually avoiding the dinner I make. On weekends, he grills and only eats what he cooks, not my dishes. Weekday dinners with my boys have become a great bonding experience. We eat around 4 o'clock when they get home from school, setting the table, helping with final food prep, and cleaning up together. This time has brought us closer, teaching valuable skills, even in the garden where we've created an awesome space. In summary, some things in my life are great, while others are awful. I'm unsure whether this marriage is worth continuing in its current state, or if I should let Jim go now and provide financial benefits. Deep down, I know he's not happy and no longer sees me as his wife or lover, just as a co-parent. I love Jim a lot and will carry the burden of what I did for the rest of my life. I want to return to the loving relationship we once had, but I doubt he'll allow it. Please let me know what you think I should do. I'd appreciate any suggestions on how to successfully earn back my husband's love and trust after betraying him so brazenly. Thank you, Amy. Update. Last month, I followed the advice and decided to temporarily move out of the house to give our marriage some space. I rented a furnished apartment nearby and have been living there since. While I miss being with my husband and boys, and I miss my gardens, it's a relief to be away from that neighborhood. There are too many bad memories and vibes there, all of which I know are my fault. I'm not making excuses for what I did. When I told Jim about my decision, he seemed surprised and a bit saddened, asking many questions. His reaction showed me a lot, indicating that he still loves me. I could see it in his eyes. I pick up my boys after school, and they come over to my apartment for dinner and spend the night a few days a week. Jim and I are flexible about it, and the kids can come and go freely between our places. The main challenge now is that being out of the house means I don't see Jim much, and I'm not in a position to talk to him. So I end up calling him, asking silly questions multiple times a week just to stay connected. We've had several lengthy conversations about various things recently, another sign that he still loves me. I know I love him. That's all for now. Thanks and take care. Update. What a journey. Life is like a roller coaster with its ups and downs. Unfortunately, after 2 years into our second marriage, Jim decided that it's best for us to get a divorce. Jim mentioned that he still loves me and might want to rekindle a romantic relationship in the future, but he believes it's challenging to do while we're married. He explained it's something psychological. He feels disrespected and betrayed while still married, but thinks he can let go of those feelings after the divorce. Jim suggested we celebrate our divorce once it's final, possibly even spending the night together. While it might sound like a strange way to part without guilt, I'm willing to go along with it if it means keeping Jim in my life as a partner, lover, and friend. Jim made it clear that even if we reconnect, we won't get remarried. He believes a binding contract isn't necessary if we truly love each other. I agree with that, but I do wish there was a way to do this without divorcing. Regarding the divorce, I've decided to let him keep 3/4 of our marital assets voluntarily, despite him not meeting the postnup stipulations. I won't pursue alimony or child support. Some may criticize me for being generous, but I believe he earned the money and would have given it all to me if I had remained faithful. I'm at peace with this decision and can live comfortably for the next 8 years or more without working. Currently, I am working, so things are even better financially. I want to offer advice to women struggling with temptation, as I have. My suggestion is to resist it. The thrill is not worth the risk. If you find it challenging to control yourself, seek professional help. From my experience, the short-term high is not worth the long-term loss of love, respect, and trust. I'm a 32-year-old guy married to Kat. We've been together for the past 2 years, dating for 2 years before getting married. Recently, things have not been going well between us. The trouble started 2 months ago when my wife suggested we open up our marriage to add excitement. I was surprised by her suggestion. I never thought she'd bring it up. I want to clarify that I'm not trying to control her, but given our history, it's tough for me to believe she's interested in trying this. Let's face it, open marriage is risky and often ends up hurting one or both partners. I told her clearly that I'm not comfortable with an open marriage. It's not that I'm against trying new things or spicing up our married life, but I want those things to stay within the boundaries of a closed marriage with no third person involved. She was disappointed because it's rare for me to deny her something. I love her a lot and usually go along with her requests, even if it means making compromises. Although she didn't say anything after our conversation, I could sense that she was not happy about it. I wanted to get to the bottom of the situation and understand her reasoning. I began questioning my abilities in bed. I wanted to talk to her, but she remained silent. Kat is a consultant with a busy work schedule, often working in different time zones, which disrupts her work-life balance. While I also have a hectic work schedule, it doesn't require me to go beyond our time zone, making it easier for me. Due to her work schedule, I couldn't discuss my concerns with her. I blamed myself for impulsively saying no to her. I should have asked for more information before making a decision. I felt terrible. Nearly 2 weeks later, I got home early from work one day and made her favorite meal for dinner. She was happy with my gesture. We hugged and spent quality time together. I took that opportunity to ask her about her suggestion for an open marriage. She immediately became frustrated, accusing me of playing mind games. I didn't trick her. I just wanted to spend time with her and understand her perspective on open marriage. That's it. I got upset with her accusations and asked her directly if I was not meeting her needs. After that, she opened up. She told me about interns in her office who are fresh out of college and in their early 20s. They party a lot and hook up whenever they can. Their adventurous stories planted the idea of open marriage in her mind. She admitted to feeling a fear of missing out when her young colleagues talked about their exciting lives. I listened to her and understood her point of view. It's natural for people to be influenced by tempting things. I told her I'm not comfortable with the idea of an open marriage because I cherish our relationship. Our bond means a lot to me. Before I met Kat, I also lived a wild life in my 20s, doing the same things as others, but I went through the emotional challenges that everyone does. Excitement can fade, leaving behind emptiness. Finding comfort in Kat after meeting her, I didn't want to go back to my old life. We got married, and she was the one I envisioned a family and growing old with. I openly shared my thoughts on open marriage with her, suggesting we reconsider if she was genuinely interested. However, she immediately denied it, though she seemed to understand. I thought she agreed with my opinion during our conversation, but I was mistaken. Everything seemed normal for a few days, but after about a week, her behavior changed drastically. She started acting cold, attributing it to work stress. Recently, she's been behaving terribly, throwing tantrums over trivial things and mocking me as outdated. When I asked her about it, she explained that I'm too stubborn in sticking to my beliefs and not keeping up with trends. I questioned what she meant by following the trend, as I stay updated with fashion, music, and web series. I asked if my reluctance for an open marriage upset her, and she simply nodded, leaving me confused. Throughout this time, her work schedule became busier, with more late nights. Initially, it was only a few days a month, but now she's coming home late almost every other day, sometimes even at dawn. When I confronted her, she mentioned aiming for a promotion, proving her worth for the position. While I admire her ambition, I worry about the truth. Honestly, I'm hesitant to entertain negative thoughts or jump to conclusions. Yesterday, something happened that prompted me to share my feelings and seek advice from the community. I reached home earlier than usual and decided to prepare Kat's favorite lasagna for dinner. Despite her late-night plans, I wanted to surprise her. I messaged her, and she responded that she'd be late, maybe after midnight, dampening my enthusiasm. I spent the next hour playing video games, hungry, but wanting to have dinner with Kat. An urge led me to pick her up from the office, something I'd never done before unless we had plans after work. Thinking it would be a nice surprise, I rushed to her office, a standalone building easy to spot. Waiting outside for 30 to 45 minutes, it was 12:30 a.m., but there was no sign of Kat. Worried, I went upstairs to inquire at the reception. The office was still bustling with night shift employees, and the receptionist informed me that Kat had already left. I regretted the idea and drove back home, only to find she wasn't there either. Concerned for her safety, cheating was the last thing on my mind. I was more worried about her well-being. It was too late to reach out to any of Kat's work friends, and since she had only joined the company 6 months ago, I didn't have their contact information. I felt unsure about what to do. Exhausted and anxious, I fell asleep on the couch. When I woke up with the first light of the sun, I hurried to my room. On impulse, I found Kat comfortably sleeping in bed. I rushed to her, tucked her in, and went back to sleep. In the morning, she was already getting ready for work. I asked when she had come home last night, and she mentioned it was around 3 a.m. due to a busy day at work, including a meeting with an Asian client. Curious, I inquired about when she left the office, and she casually said around 2:30 a.m., leaving me shocked. Her response raised concerns. Either the receptionist gave me incorrect information about Kat not being at the office around 12:30 a.m., or Kat was lying about being there until 2:30 a.m. Still feeling dizzy from the previous night's stress, I didn't press further. She called me in the afternoon, asking if I had been to her office. The receptionist had informed her about my midnight visit. I wondered about the receptionist's unusual working hours, but explained why I had gone to her office. She was silent for a moment, then clarified that she had left her office in the afternoon for a meeting at her client's U.S. office in another part of the city. This explained why she wasn't in her office when I checked. I was puzzled by her explanation. She elaborated that her client was an Asian company with a U.S. office, where she participated in Zoom calls with employees in the Asian time zone. Despite this being a common practice worldwide, I felt confused about my own situation. I'm at a loss and don't know what to do next. Should I wait for things to settle or confront Kat again with my doubts? I've confronted her multiple times in the past. Any suggestions or advice would be appreciated. Update. I received some shocking news. Please bear with me as I vent. I attempted various ways to access Kat's emails or her phone's password, but she kept it very private. I tried hard to come up with ideas to uncover the truth, but I didn't succeed. In the last 2 weeks, Kat continued to come home late from work, and we were both giving each other the cold shoulder with very few occasional and transactional conversations. 2 days ago, she was talking to her mom, who has been dealing with kidney problems for the past few years, and her recent blood test results were not good. While she was on the bed talking to her mom, I, out of concern, took her phone to check on her mom while she narrated her tiresome routine of tests and medicine. Something clicked in my head. I peeked at the unlocked phone screen with chat notifications. I got up, walked into the room while talking to her mom, casually entered the washroom while on the phone, and locked the door. I put the phone on speaker, pretended to listen, and read the messages through the notification. The notification revealed that Kat was supposed to meet someone that day for a fun ride. I opened her social media messages, and you were right. She was having an affair. She was involved with these inexperienced coworkers. After a couple of minutes, she realized I took her phone into the washroom, and she started knocking on the door to get it back. I didn't have enough time to read all the conversations, so I quickly scanned her gallery for concrete proof. The gallery was filled with explicit pictures of my beautiful wife in compromising positions with her coworkers. I emailed those pictures to myself and deleted the history. She's cheating on me with multiple colleagues. I felt so sick that I wanted to throw up. Meanwhile, my wife kept knocking on the door, asking for her phone back. I couldn't stand to hear her nagging voice. I unlocked the door, swiftly handed her the phone, and locked the washroom again. Initially, I wanted to rush out and confront her right away. But instead, I calmed myself down and let the anger pass. The chat notifications contained details about the location and the time they were supposed to meet that day. Leaving the washroom, I grabbed the car keys and drove to that location. While leaving the house, she faintly called my name, but I didn't bother to turn back. At the hotel, I chose the darkest table in the lobby, not to cause a scene, but to observe how comfortable she was on her way to cheat. She was supposed to be there at 5 p.m., and I arrived at 3, downing countless shots by 5. I had initially hoped to confront her at home, but God knows what I was thinking. Maybe too numb and unready for a face-off, not even in the lobby. By 6, she didn't show up. I thought she might have sensed my presence and changed the location. Nevertheless, I was too drunk and drained to think clearly. I sat there, continuing to drink. Around 7, I saw Kat. At that sight, my world crumbled. My vision blurred after 4 hours of drinking. I faintly remembered what happened next, reacting in autopilot mode. I got up, staggered to the reception area where she was registering her entry, tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Good luck with your fun ride." I might have said more, but this is the summarized version. She held my hand, attempting to explain, but I don't recall her words. I do remember shrugging her off, freeing my arms from her grasp, and storming out of the hotel. I hailed a cab to my friend's place and passed out at his door. The next thing I remember is waking up on my friend's couch yesterday afternoon. I slept for 16 hours straight. It was Sunday afternoon. My friend Lee made me some lunch along with fresh lemonade. I poured out my entire story to him. He advised me to freeze joint accounts, change passwords, and get an STD check immediately. For someone betrayed so badly, money and all these privacy checks were the least of my concerns. I reached out to my dead phone, plugged it in, and switched it on. The screen flooded with notifications, 100+ missed calls, 50+ voicemails, and countless pleading messages. I ignored it all. After a few minutes, calls and messages from her started again. I blocked her on all platforms. I felt so disgusted that I didn't even read her messages and emails completely. Today is Monday. I've called in sick for the next few days at my office. I don't know how to deal with this. I've been drinking heavily and want to run away from all of this. I don't know what to do now. My friend is searching for some of the best lawyers in the vicinity. Update. I recommended securing our shared accounts, changing passwords for sensitive information, and getting tested for STDs. Thankfully, the test results were negative. Lee assisted me in finding a lawyer, and I shared all the pictures from Kat's phone with him. I temporarily settled with Lee until the divorce is finalized, which worked out well since he needed a roommate. Throughout this time, Kat has been trying to reach me, pleading for us to get back together and start anew. She also contacted Lee, asking for his help in reconciling our marriage. According to her, the hookups were meaningless, and she was just exploring her desires, wanting to feel attractive. I'm uncertain about these Gen Z concepts of desirability and whether the whole idea is genuine or not. A few days after my last update, I sent Lee to my house with keys to collect my belongings, hoping Kat would be at the office on a regular workday. However, Lee found her at home, where she broke down and sought his help. Lee was clever enough to inform her that I was staying in a hotel, not at his place, to avoid any potential drama. Kat informed Lee that she had quit her job, revealing that it all began when interns at work started flirting with her. They made her feel desired and beautiful again, leading her to try various experiences, including illicit ones. Initially, it was a one-time thing, but she later became dependent on the thrill. Since the interns didn't make enough money, they relied on Kat to cover their expenses. She eventually realized they were taking advantage of her financially, but by then, she was already immersed in that lifestyle. When Lee questioned why she didn't confess earlier, Kat claimed she had spoken to me about opening up the marriage due to guilt. However, my refusal to agree prevented her from confessing anything to me. I find it confusing. What's the point of asking for an open marriage after cheating on me? Kat is resisting signing the divorce papers and blaming me for motivating her one-night stands, but she can't provide evidence for her false claims. Now she's seeking alimony, citing mental distress caused by the divorce. If anyone deserves compensation, it's me, as I had to endure the terrible feelings of betrayal. Later that month, Kat's sister, Amy, name changed, contacted me, pleading for reconciliation. She shared how Kat is going through tough times, leading to severe depression due to the interns damaging her reputation at the office. They circulated compromising pictures of Kat having fun with them to other senior employees, mocking her as an easy target. This gossip made her the center of attention at the office, forcing her to leave. Senior employees spread the gossip outside the office network, making it difficult for Kat to get referrals. I reminded Amy that Kat chose to leave our stable married life for a thrilling experience, and now she has to face the consequences. Anyways, I'm moving forward with my life. I've kept my drinking habits in check, focused on working out, eating healthy, and staying busy at work. The divorce proceedings are ongoing despite Kat's resistance. It got delayed, but my lawyer assures me that it will wrap up soon.